We got a great DM on the Sumer Sports account basically saying, "Hey, Eric, Thomas, we really love the show. Could you help explain the Mahomes contract?" So I made a tweet that I said, "Look, I think if Burrow signs the Mahomes contract, it becomes easier." And it's interesting because not everybody is as well versed as contract stuff as you specifically, and then myself as well. Like the Mahomes contract is incredibly team friendly, but also player friendly. And this is my good friend Brant Tillis was the one that wrote this contract and really constructed it. And I think the Bills copied it a little bit. But this idea of rolling guarantees. So when Mahomes signed the 10-year, 470 million or 500 million contract, there was only 60 million guaranteed at signing. Right. And this is one of the things like coding up these things at Sumer, I like come to appreciate even more in depth because it's so unique. But the crazy thing about Mahomes' deal is he has what's called rolling guarantees. So there's two instruments that they use that really help the team. There's roster bonuses embedded in there, and those roster bonuses only become the guaranteed money becomes guaranteed 2 years in advance every single time. So when you think about and this is like expected contracts work, I know of Spielberger and folks like the 2024 guarantees become guaranteed when he plays in 2022, right? So the player constantly has 2 years of fully or 3 years of fully guaranteed contracts. And that just continues to roll. So if the Chiefs were ever to move on from Mahomes, they would basically eat 2 or 3 years of just dead money and BS to get rid of him. So effectively speaking, the whole thing's guaranteed. But it's not with respect to, they gave him the 10-year deal. And if something were to happen to Mahomes, they would just have 3 really bad years and then they could move on. And so there's that. But there's also this, and it was really funny because I was at the contract negotiation competition with Nick Polk, your guy, formerly of the Falcons, and he was explaining to one of the competitors that like the roster bonus thing it gives you that freedom because to the player, a roster bonus and a signing bonus are the exact same thing, right? But you just get the money up front. And at the beginning of the deal, they're the exact same thing. They're money that you pay right at signing. But every single year, you get this really interesting dynamic of and this is what the Chiefs did this year. Mahomes had a $27 million roster bonus, and the previous years, they would convert it to a signing bonus and cut the cost in fifths and prorate it over 5 years so that they could afford what they want to do this year. And still like, and as the cap goes up, the relative amount of that money goes down over the years, right? So it's an instrument that teams will use. But this year, the Chiefs paid Mahomes' roster bonus in full. They gave him a $27 million check and assigned it to this year's cap completely, which means next season, they don't have to – they've got that money, and Mahomes is going to get that $27 million this year no matter what. It's just how it was, accounted for. And so Mahomes' deal every single year has this big roster bonus that the Chiefs can decide whether or not to pay it full or to cut it in fifths and prorate it out. And they basically decide to do that dependent upon where the state of the roster is. The 1 year that they lost Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher, they had to cut it in fifths because they needed the money to get tackles in the building. Last year, they didn't. And so that deal gives the Chiefs a ton of flexibility while also giving the player the money that he's worth on the open market. And that to me is like, if Joe Burrow can do that for the Bengals, I think that the Bengals will not necessarily have to do what the doomsday scenario where it's this year or nothing. I think that if he agrees to a contract like that, then I think that they're in business.